Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fox 12 Now. There's a live look at Mount Hood right there from our ski bowl camera. It still looks pretty amazing up there. We do know there's some more cloudy weather that's not making its way in, but nonetheless, that's pretty great shot right there. Thanks for joining us today. Of course, we are here live every weekday starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, and we cover a wide range of topics on this show. We are live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, our website, and our apps, so lots of places to find us and join in the conversations that we get to have. Right now, though, we're going to be talking about wild turkeys. I'm not talking about whiskey. I'm talking about actual wild turkeys that are out there in the wilderness here of Oregon. And if you've ever encountered them before, it is really a sight to behold. I mean, yes, they're amazing creatures. Sometimes they can also be a little bit intimidating. Maybe that's just to me. And I was talking about this before, but this was an encounter that I had last year for Thanksgiving. That was heading to my uncle's house, and we were blocked by wild turkeys who just swarmed the road and blocked our car. So what do you do when that happens? What do you do when you encounter them in the wild, and what should we know? Well, to help us out right now, we have Beth Quillian from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And Beth, always great to have you here on the show. And I think it's interesting and this is a conversation that actually was just coming up here in the newsroom where someone was just saying, I didn't even realize there were wild turkeys in Oregon, but they are here. And to talk about that, could you maybe give us an idea of where maybe they're distributed mostly here in Oregon?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg. So wild turkeys are actually not native to Oregon. They were introduced in the 1960s, but now they can be found pretty much throughout the state. But their best habitat is really southwestern Oregon, but the populations in the Willamette Valley are growing, as well as throughout the Blue Mountains. So populations are growing, and they can be found throughout the state.
So this started in the 60s, really? So it's that recent that they were introduced?
Yes.
And how did that happen? Do we know, was it like an escape from a farm or intentionally released?
They were intentionally released, yeah. Successfully introduced in 1961. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now that they're here and the populations are spreading, as you mentioned, so they're the Blue Mountains, you have a lot of them over there, but now we're seeing them here in the Willamette Valley. And so what are some of the reasons that they're spreading so far like that?
Well, wild turkeys are habitat generalists, so they don't really have a whole lot of specific habitat requirements. As long as there's trees for them to roost, and as long as there's resources available for them food-wise, they can thrive in a variety of habitats. So that's one reason. And also, they're not only habitat generalists, they're also food generalists. Their diet, they eat all kinds of things from grasses to leafy plants, fruits, seeds, as well as invertebrates like snails and slugs, and they will occasionally eat lizards and frogs as well. So kind of all across the board, they like to eat a lot of different things.
So with that, them being more generalists than when it comes to their diet, how much of an issue is that for the environment?
Well, thankfully, because they are generalists, they're not really much competition for species that are super specific. If a species has something really specific, they're not necessarily competing with them. So that is kind of a good thing when it comes to them being generalists. But the downside is that they are also interested in things that humans provide, like birdseed, pet food, the fruit trees in your yard. So that's something really important to consider, that there's a lot of different things that can bring turkeys calling.
And when it comes to that side of things too, as far as the wild turkey populations, is this something that's sustainable? Is this of concern? Is this something where we need to do some things to control that population?
I think right now, turkey populations are doing well, and it also does provide some good opportunities for hunting. So that's a good thing. Oregon has spring and fall turkey hunting opportunities. So for people who are interested in that, I encourage them to visit our website, myodfw.com, and you can learn all about the spring and fall hunting seasons, as well as tips and tricks to get into turkey hunting.
And I would love to talk a little bit more too about the hunting side of things, but something else just for people in general to know. So if you live in an area where if you live in an area where there is a big population of wild turkeys, they certainly can cause some issues. You're going to know they're there, most likely, because they don't really keep it a secret when they're around. But what are some important things for those people to know if you are in those areas?
Yeah, if you've got turkeys in your neighborhood, it's important to know that there can be quite a few issues that can come from that. Turkeys are usually in groups of like 5 to 20. That's kind of a normal group of turkeys, but turkeys that are being fed by people, whether that's deliberately, whether someone intends to feed turkeys, or if it's accidentally, that can cause turkeys to stay in one area for a lot longer, and it can cause those groups to explode and be 100 or more birds, which can cause some real issues. Some of those issues are turkeys can be aggressive during the breeding season. You know, toms might fight their reflection in your vehicle, so your vehicle could get damaged. They can be aggressive towards people and pets. The way that they forage for food, they're pecking and scraping, and normally they're pecking and scraping along, and they're moving along to find food. They're not staying in one particular spot for an extended period of time. But if people are providing food to them and they know that, they might stick around for a lot longer. And like I said, those numbers can get pretty big, which can make a pretty significant impact on the landscape. Your landscaping, for example, garden, and not to mention all the scat that comes with that as well, can be really unpleasant. And they can cause damage to shingles, your roof. So there's some unpleasant things that can come with having turkeys hanging around your yard.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those areas and for people who are dealing with that, I guess you mentioned one thing, talking about the food side of things first. So there's all the natural things that they're going to eat since they are generalists, but you mentioned either people intentionally feeding or unintentionally. What are some of those unintentional ways that people are feeding turkeys?
Birdseed is a big one. If you've got bird feeders, it's not only birds that are going to be enjoying that. Turkeys and other animals as well are going to take advantage of birdseed on the ground, even rodents and that kind of thing. So just be mindful. And bears, if you live in an area where there's bears, bears are attracted to birdseed as well. So that's one. Another would be pet food. They're generalists. They'll even eat pet food. So we encourage people not to feed pets outside, not to store pet food outside. Also, if you've got fruit trees in your yard, you want to pick that fruit up as it's falling. Don't just let it stay on the ground because turkeys will be attracted to that. Fence your gardens. You know, there's things that you can do to protect the things that you're growing in your garden that you certainly don't want turkeys getting into.
And so keeping that food away from them being one of the big things, whether that's, intentional or unintentional, whatever, they're going to eat it. So other than keeping food out of their, other than, I guess, keeping food away from them and making that unavailable for them, what are some other ways that people can help mitigate some of those risks? Or if they do have a lot of wild turkeys in the area, maybe ask them to move on in a nice way.
Yeah, the number one thing I want to mention is that dealing with turkeys is really a community effort. So if you have turkeys in your neighborhood, really encourage your neighbors to take steps and precautions to do those things like taking down bird feeders, don't feed them intentionally, really get everyone on the same page because it might just take one neighbor to cause issues in a whole community. So get everyone on board. If you're in a city, you could also encourage community members to enact a no feeding ordinance, which can just help put a little more power behind the idea that feeding wildlife is not a great idea and can often come with a lot of different issues. Um, and then if you are dealing with a lot of turkeys, kind of these super flocks, if you will, then you can contact ODFW. You can call your local district office and request a free hazing permit. It's illegal to harass wildlife without a permit. So by calling an office and requesting a hazing permit, then that opens the door for you to be able to use some different tactics to make turkeys as uncomfortable as possible on your property and get them to move on. So hazing is something that it doesn't harm turkeys. It's not going to kill them. It's things like chasing them, spraying them with a garden hose, using scarecrows, mylar streamers, motion activated lights, that kind of thing.
Things that they're not going to enjoy very much.
Right. Yes.
Is there any kind of natural predator that for the wild turkeys?
Yeah, there are different predators in Oregon, certainly. will feed on turkeys. So, we've got things like cougars and coyotes. So those are a couple things that might be interested in turkeys as well.
And one more thing to talking about the hunting side. So you mentioned that it is possible to go hunting for wild turkeys. And what is the typical season for that?
So there's two different seasons in Oregon. There's the spring season, which is about 6 weeks, and it starts in mid-April. And then the fall season is mid-October, and it goes for 10 weeks. And the spring season is certainly the more prime opportunity because that's when folks are really going after the big tom turkeys.
Do we anticipate these turkey populations to continue growing?
It's possible if there's food available, as long as food stays available. Yeah, they may continue growing. So that is an important thing to consider, which is why not providing even more food for them is important. They already have plenty of natural forage year round, and they really do not need handouts from people. If you think about it, just the wide variety of things that they eat is more than enough for them.
So the main thing I'm really learning here is make sure they're not getting just a free meal everywhere they go, and
Yes.
don't leave them that food out there. And I know that part of this too has to do with this brochure. This is going to be a little small on everybody's screen, but to give you an idea, there's the new brochure that came out just talking about this. What are the main things that you think people should know about living with wild turkeys?
Yeah, it can be really cool to see turkeys in your yard wandering through the neighborhood, and as long as they're not, staying too long and the flock's growing too big, it can be a cool thing to enjoy. But I think it's important that everyone does their part in making sure that turkeys stay wild, that they're continuing to eat what is natural to them, and then they're not grouping in these big flocks, which can be really bad for turkeys as well. It can increase the risk of disease spread among turkeys, avian influenza, salmonella, among other diseases. So by congregating turkeys, it provides an opportunity for disease to spread. So that's another thing to consider, in addition to all the unpleasant things that people certainly don't want to deal with, from scat to damaged landscapes to turkeys scratching up their vehicles.
Right, fighting with your car. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely not something that I think anybody's gonna want. Well, Beth, thank you very much for joining us today just to talk about this, and for a lot of Oregonians, this is something that they need to consider and deal with, and to learn a little bit more about it is really, really great. So thank you for that. And so for everybody out there who wants to go find out more about this, see the new brochure, learn some different tips and tricks for managing these populations if they are in your area, what's the best place for them to go?
You can go to ODFW.com to our Living with Turkeys section, and you can find the brochure there. And if you're interested in a bit more information about hunting turkeys, then you can visit myodfw.com for all the details.
Fantastic. Beth, thank you so much. Always appreciate you being here on Fox 12 Now.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you.
And again, for everybody watching too, this is Fox 12 Now. If this is your first time watching, thanks. We've got a lot of segments here that we cover every day, and we cover a wide range of things. Coming up at 1:30 p.m., we're going to be talking about spring break travel. A lot of people are going to be heading out, maybe heading to the airport, flying somewhere over these next couple of weeks. And if you are doing so, you should make sure that your data is secure. We're going to have a cybersecurity expert joining us to tell you about what to watch out for, because scam artists are everywhere, and there are ways you can make sure that you're safe and don't get taken advantage of for that. So that's coming up at 1:30 p.m. You can join us right back. Whatever platform you are watching on, I will be there. I do encourage you to download the Fox 12 Oregon app, though, on whatever your device is, or whether you're on an Apple TV, a Fire TV, Roku. We're on all of those. That way you can just watch Fox 12 Now directly on there, and our other programming too. Thanks for joining us. I'll be back shortly. I'm Greg Dibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.